Hey there, friends. Have you ever seen rain that burns like fire? Sounds like a nightmare, right? Well, I'm about to take you on a wild and spooky journey that started one fateful day in my small town. As I describe the strange storm and the chilling events that followed, I want you to be on the edge of your seat. So, grab your favorite snack, make yourself comfortable, and let's dive into a story full of mystery and adventure. Before we begin, I have something special just for you. Click the link in the description below to learn more about a fantastic dietary supplement I've discovered that can boost your health. Now, let's jump right into the rain that burns. I remember that day vividly. The sky was a mix of dark gray and swirling purple clouds. It looked like something out of a spooky storybook. I was just playing outside when the wind picked up suddenly, making the trees sway like they were dancing in a panic. I ran inside, feeling a shiver run down my spine. That's when it began. The first drop of rain hit my skin, and it felt like being splashed with hot oil. I screamed and pulled back, staring in disbelief as the rain came pouring down like a waterfall. My neighbors were shouting too, running around, trying to find shelter from the burning rain. It was terrifying. People scrambled into their homes, slamming doors behind them. I rushed to the windows, peering outside. The rain was relentless, each drop sizzling as it hit the ground. Suddenly, I noticed something strange. The storm wasn't just a random event. It seemed to be moving intentionally, almost like it was searching for someone. I saw old Mr. Jenkins, who lived next door. He was trying to cover himself with a tattered umbrella, but the rain seemed to swirl towards him, targeting him specifically. My heart raced as I watched. I called out for him, but he didn't hear me over the deafening roar of the storm. In a horrifying moment, I watched as the rain enveloped him. He gasped, falling to the ground, his skin turning red. It was the most chilling thing I'd ever seen. Panic electrified the air. People screamed as they sprinted for cover, but it felt like the storm was playing a game, an evil game where it chose who would get hurt. I could hear cries of terror rising above the rain's pounding. After a few moments, I noticed a group of kids gathered in a circle, trying to hide under the eaves of a large oak tree. My instinct was to run to them, but as I stepped outside for just a moment, the rain seemed to reach for me, sizzling against my skin. I pulled back, heart racing, realizing I had to stay inside. I frantically dialed my friend, Jamie, who lived a few streets away. I could barely hear her voice over the chaos, but she was safe, at least for now. We talked about how strange this storm was and how it felt like something out of a scary movie. As we chatted, I heard a knock at the door. I peeked through the peephole and saw a familiar face, Sarah, my classmate, drenched and terrified. I opened the door just a crack, urging her to come in. The moment she stepped inside, she collapsed, shaking with fear. "Did you see it?" she gasped between breaths. "The rain, it knows." I had no idea what she meant, but I felt it too, an unsettling presence, as if the storm was watching us. We huddled together, trying to make sense of what was happening, when suddenly the lights flickered, and the house was cast into darkness. Our hearts pounded, the eerie silence filling the room like a thick fog. Then we heard a low, growling sound. Was it the wind? Or something else? We exchanged wide-eyed glances. Fear held us in place. And just when I thought things couldn't get any scarier, the windows began to rattle as if something outside was trying to get in. We whispered among ourselves, trying to stay calm, but deep down, we all knew this storm was something different. Something angry. The wind howled louder, and a flash of lightning lit up the room, revealing shadows swirling outside. I swear I saw figures moving in the rain, dark shapes darting around like they were alive. It was chilling. Every storm I'd ever experienced felt tiny compared to this one. It was like nature itself had turned on us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were in real danger. "Gather everyone in the basement," I shouted, trying to stay brave. Sarah grabbed my hand, and together we rushed to tell the others. As we went from room to room, the feeling of dread grew heavier. The storm was growing, and we had to find safety. When we finally gathered everyone in the dim light of the basement, I could see the fear in their eyes. The noise of the storm above us was deafening, but it was the whispers of uncertainty that clung to my heart. What was this storm? Why was it targeting people? And what did it want from us? Just then, there was a loud crash. We froze, eyes wide, as debris fell from above, shaking the walls around us. We were trapped. I could see the terror reflected in my friends' faces, and I knew we had to find a way out. My mind raced, and for the first time, I wished I could wake up from this nightmare and return to the sunny days of just playing outside. But this was real, and there was no way I was going to let fear take control. I told everyone that we needed to stick together, no matter what. As the storm raged on outside, we made a plan to try to escape this nightmare, our hearts pounding to the rhythm of the storm overhead. As we whispered in the dim light of the basement, I could feel the tension in the air. Everyone was scared, and I could see it in their faces. Just then, another crash echoed above us, louder this time. It felt like the world outside was collapsing. The walls vibrated, and I grabbed Sarah's arm tightly, trying to soothe her even though I felt just as terrified. I glanced around the basement, searching for anything that could help us. It was dark, but I could see old tools and half-empty boxes stacked haphazardly in the corners. The air was damp and heavy, making it hard to breathe. I thought about how we used to play hide-and-seek down here, laughing and having fun. Those days felt like a distant memory now, replaced by the gut-wrenching fear that coursed through me. Then, I heard something, a soft whisper almost like a child's voice, drifting through the cracks of the old wooden beams above. "Help me," it called, eerily sweet and heartbreaking. My heart skipped a beat. Was it my imagination, or was someone really out there? I felt a chill creep down my spine, and I looked at my friends for reassurance, but they looked just as lost as I was. I stood up, making my way to the top of the stairs, feeling a sudden urge to escape and find the source of the voice. "Guys, stay here," I said, trying to sound brave. As I crept up, the steps creaked under my weight, echoing in the silence. My breath quickened as I reached the door leading to the living room. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob, knowing that whatever was outside was not normal. With a deep breath, I swung the door open. The storm raged on outside, a furious dance of wind and rain. My heart raced as I stepped through the doorway, but the room was oddly still. The eerie quiet felt wrong, like breathing in a moment just before something terrible happens. I stepped deeper into the house, the sound of the storm muffled now, as if it were trying to hide something. I called out, "Hello? Who's there?" My voice wavered, the words slipping off my tongue like ice. My heart felt like it could jump out of my chest. I peered around, searching for the source of the whisper. Then I saw it, a shadow darting past the window, too quick to make out. I felt a pull, a strange urge to follow. I approached the glass, pressing my face against it. For a moment, I thought I saw a child standing in the rain, their eyes wide and pleading, but just as quickly as they appeared, they disappeared into the darkness. "Guys, come look," I shouted, but my friends were hesitant, still clutching each other in fear. I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. Someone needed help, and I wasn't going to abandon them. Against their protests, I pushed through the door and stepped outside. The rain hit me like a million needles, burning as it touched my skin. I winced but forced myself to move, scanning the area. The shadow was gone, but the feeling of eyes watching me lingered. I walked carefully, searching every shadowy nook, my heart racing as I ventured farther away from the safety of the house. Suddenly, I heard laughter, a high, echoing giggle that sent chills down my spine. It was unlike any laugh I'd heard before, almost twisted. I turned sharply, looking for its source. The air felt charged with something sinister, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. I called out again, "Who's there? Show yourself." The cold rain dripped down my face, and in that moment, I felt stupid for talking to the darkness. Yet, something inside me urged me to keep going. I wanted to understand or maybe confront whatever was out there. Then I stumbled upon something, an old swing set that I recognized from my childhood, now rusted and barely hanging together. The laughter echoed around me, bouncing off the twisted metal, and I felt a flash of confusion and fear. This was a playground I had cherished, but now it looked sinister under the stormy sky. The swings creaked eerily, swinging back and forth as if someone had just gotten off. My breath hitched as I approached, and it felt like the air around me thickened, like someone was whispering secrets I couldn't quite hear. The shadows loomed larger, almost like they were reaching out towards me, pulling me closer to the swing set. I felt an overwhelming urge to run, but rooted to the spot by a mix of curiosity and dread. In a surge of bravery, I grasped the swing, feeling the cold, wet chains beneath my fingertips. The roar of the storm faded away, leaving only the chilling laughter echoing around me. But as I swung back, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a figure creeping around the edge of the playground. More than just a shadow, human but distorted, moving as if it were dancing. My heart sank. It was then that I realized the rain wasn't just rain, it was alive. Something was manipulating it, and I was its pawn. Panic surged through me as I turned to run, but the laughter grew louder, surrounding me like a thick blanket. I stumbled, falling to the ground, and the rain burned my skin like it was angered. As I scrambled to my feet, I heard the kids from the basement yelling my name. "I'm coming!" I shouted, my voice cracking. I ran back toward the house, desperate to escape the sinister playground and the nightmare that was unfolding around me. But as I reached the door, it wouldn't budge. I pushed and pushed, my heart racing as the storm surged behind me, powerful and furious. I felt something cold brush against my shoulder, and I froze in place, the laughter now a cacophony of sinister delight. I pressed my ear against the door, listening for any sign of my friends, praying they were safe. "Let me in," I cried. The wind howled, and in that moment, I felt a cold gust sweep past me, pulling at my clothes. What was happening? Would I be trapped out here forever as the storm continued its eerie game? Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew I couldn't give up. I had to find a way to break free from this nightmare, to confront whatever dark force was causing this, and to save my friends. With one final push, I rammed my shoulder against the door. It flew open, and I stumbled inside, breathing heavily. The basement was eerily quiet, but I could see my friends huddled together, their faces pale with fear. I saw something. I gasped, trying to catch my breath, but there was no time to explain. The storm was still raging, and I could feel the air thickening again. I could sense that whatever was in the storm was getting closer, tightening its grip on us. "We need to find a way to stop it before it comes for us," I declared, my voice steady despite my trembling hands. The room was filled with dread, but I had to rally my friends. We could figure out a way to break the storm's hold over us if only we put our heads together. But as each second ticked by, the sinister laughter lingered in the corners of my mind, daring me to give in to the fear that threatened to consume us all. As I stood there, trying to rally my friends, I could see the fear in their eyes. They were clinging to each other, whispering hastily in hushed tones, each jump and flicker of light from outside mirroring the panic in their hearts. The air felt heavy, like something was pressing down on us, and I knew we needed a plan, but my mind raced in every direction, clouded by fear. "Listen, we have to figure out what that storm wants," I urged, looking at each of them. "If it's targeting us, we can't just wait here. We need answers." I could feel the strength in my voice, pushing against the tide of dread swirling around us. The whispers grew louder, almost teasing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was out there was listening. Just then, one of my friends, Ethan, spoke up, his voice trembling. "What if it's connected to the old legend? You know, the one about the storm that once cursed this town." His eyes widened as he recalled the stories we had all heard as kids. The tales of storms that came with angry spirits seeking revenge on those they believed wronged them lingered in our minds like an old nightmare refusing to fade. I remembered those stories too, how they were often told around campfires, filled with shivers and shadows. "You mean the storm that comes after the sacrifice?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine at the thought. "But that was just a myth, right?" "I don't know anymore," Ethan replied, shaking his head. "This feels too real. How do we know we're not the sacrifice?" Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and with each flicker, I felt a surge of panic rising. I glanced toward the window, where the shadows outside shifted as though alive. A sickening feeling gnawed at my stomach. Whatever was tormenting us wasn't going to stop until it got what it wanted. "We need to find something that can help us," I insisted. "Do we have any supplies? Anything that might fight this?" My heart pounded as I rifled through old boxes, my hands shaking from fear and urgency. In the corner of the basement, one of my friends unearthed an old flashlight. It flickered to life, casting long shadows against the walls. The dim light felt like a small victory amidst the darkness that threatened to swallow us whole. What if we try to shine it outside? Maybe it'll scare whatever is out there away, Jamie suggested, her resolve building even as her hands trembled. "Okay, but we have to be careful," I cautioned, glancing toward the door that led back into the storm. "It's not just rain anymore. It's like there's something inside it." We decided to take turns shining the flashlight outside, a makeshift weapon against the encroaching darkness. I was the first to step through the door again, gripping the flashlight tightly in my hand. The moment I stepped outside, the weight of the storm was heavier than before, pressing down on me like it was alive. The rain lashed against my skin, burning, exposing the vulnerability I had almost forgotten in my rush to act. I aimed the beam of light out into the tempest, my heart racing as I swept it across the yard, fear clawing at my throat. The wind howled, drowning out my racing thoughts, but when the beam finally landed on the swing set, I froze. For a brief moment, I saw it again, the figure just for an instant, standing there as if waiting. Only now, something was different. It wasn't just a shadow. It had a sense of shape and form. I could make out a face, pale and drawn, eyes wide and staring directly at me. That laugh echoed in my ears, a haunting melody that sent shivers down my spine. I stumbled backward, feeling the penetration of its gaze, prickling my skin. "What is that?" I cried out, my voice nearly swallowed by the storm. "Do you see that?" My friends emerged from the basement, peering through the door as I pointed the flashlight toward the figure. But as they joined me, it vanished into the darkness, leaving only the whisper of my heart beating in my chest. "What did you see?" Sarah asked, her voice wavering. "Did it look human?" "I don't know," I replied, feeling a wave of nausea wash over me. But it felt like it wanted something. I could sense my friends' doubts mounting, and with every passing second, the air thickened with unease. We decided to come back inside, sensing that whatever argument we had going on was no match for the force of nature outside. The shadows loomed larger, dark and taunting, filling the spaces between us with an unshakable dread. As we gathered back in the basement, I looked around at my shaken friends, realizing that we were running out of time. The storm didn't seem to be losing strength. It was only building, and the whispers grew louder as though the darkness itself was mocking us. "I think the storm is trying to tell us something," I said, unsure of where the idea had come from, but sensing the truth in my desperation. "We should try to communicate with it." "But how?" Jamie replied, eyes wide with disbelief. "You can't just ask a storm to stop." I took a deep breath, feeling foolish yet motivated. "We need to show that we understand. Maybe if we acknowledge whatever it wants, it will let us go." The thought was wild, but all I knew was that we couldn't just sit back and wait any longer. "We can use the flashlight," Ethan suggested. "We can create a signal." We quickly arranged ourselves in a circle, clutching the flashlight, sharing our fears and thoughts as we shone the light up toward the storm that loomed outside. The rain continued to pour, each drop like fire on our skin, but we focused on sending a message into the whirlwind. A strange feeling gripped me as we started to chant softly, "We understand you. We hear you." With each word, I felt the atmosphere shift. The laughter turned into something deeper, a rumbling that shook the walls. It felt as if the storm was listening, pondering our words. Just then, the flashlight flickered, casting exaggerated shadows around the basement that seemed to dance in response to our voices. The storm outside roared, and the house rattled ominously as the air crackled with energy. "Keep going," I urged, heart pounding, not knowing if we were doing the right thing. Suddenly, a deafening clap of thunder slammed against the house, making it feel like the very foundation was shaking beneath us, and everything fell silent. The storm seemed to pause, and I held my breath, the air thick with anticipation. And then it came, a whisper, clear and chilling, echoing within the walls of the basement. "Leave or be taken." The words sent a wave of terror crashing through me. The shadows around us thickened, pressing in, urging me to remember the stories again. This was not just a storm. It was a pact, a sinister promise that wrapped its fingers around our minds like a scarf slowly tightening. Leave or be taken. The haunting declaration echoed in my thoughts, reverberating through the darkness as our circle of light flickered uncertainly. I raised my hand to shield my face from the shadows that seemed to crawl out from the corners of the room. "What do we do?" Sarah shouted over the chaos, her voice full of fear. "I don't know," I yelled back, desperately scanning the faces of my friends. "We can't just give up." That eerie laughter rose again outside, rising until it was a maddening chorus, shaking us to our core. I felt the ground tremble underfoot, as if the storm was deciding whether to swallow us whole or release us. "No!" I shouted, feeling rage well up from the depths of my fear. "We won't be taken. We're not afraid of you." The moment those words left my lips, I felt a strange energy align within me, as if I had unlocked something primal. Yet, the shadows surged forward, and I saw a glimpse of what was coming. A darker form than before, swirling and tangled in the rain. It took a shape that was no longer just a shadow but something monstrous, something that came from a nightmare. A figure cloaked in storm and fury, eyes like molten fire, glaring with an intensity that sent ice through my veins. "We have to fight it," I gasped, my heart racing as I faced the looming figure, taking a step forward, determined. Together, as I stood my ground, staring into the roiling darkness that had taken shape just outside the basement, I could feel my heart pounding violently against my ribcage. The shadows twisted and formed a figure, its edges fraying like the smoke from a dying fire crackling in the wind. It seemed to draw energy from the storm itself, growing larger and more formidable with every second. And I wondered if it had been waiting for us all along. "Stay together," I urged, adrenaline rushing through me. My friends huddled close, their eyes wide with fear, mirroring my own terror but also their determination. I could see it in their faces. They were willing to fight against the unknown, just as I was. A flash of lightning lit up the chaos outside, illuminating the creature for a fleeting second. What I saw made my stomach drop. A grotesque figure with twisted limbs and a face that was half melted, a horrifying mockery of humanity. Its hollow eyes burned bright like an inferno, fixated on me as if it were judging my very soul. I felt a surge of dread wash over me, but I couldn't let it consume me. "Not now. Grab something," I shouted, forcing myself to break the tension. We rifled through the clutter in the basement, searching for anything to defend ourselves. I stumbled over an old metal pipe, its surface cold and familiar against my palm. It felt heavy, reassuring, and in my mind, it transformed into a weapon against the nightmarish presence looming outside. "Whatever it is, it thrives on fear," I said, my voice barely rising above the thunder's roar. "If we resist, it might weaken." Then, as if responding to our resolve, the figure lurched forward, sending shockwaves through the air that rattled the window panes. The darkness swirled, and I felt the air chill around us, filling the basement with an unnatural cold that set my teeth on edge. "Now!" I yelled, raising the pipe. We all turned our flashlights toward the fearsome presence, beams slicing through the rain-soaked darkness. The creature paused, as if momentarily stunned by the light. It flickered, its form distorting, shivering in response. Laughter echoed around us, mocking our stance filled with vengeance. "Get out! Get out! Get out!" A chorus of whispers surrounded us, invading my mind. I covered my ears as the sound twisted and twined around our resolve, creeping into my thoughts, trying to make me doubt. It felt like thousands of tiny hands brushing against my skin, urging me to turn back. But I couldn't yield now. Too much was at stake. With renewed determination, I took a step forward, raising the pipe like a banner of defiance. "We won't let you take us," I called out, feeling strength surge from the core of my being. Against the oncoming storm, we shone our lights brighter, and I could almost feel my bravery pouring outwards, mixing with theirs, forming a wave of resistance against the looming darkness. Just then, the creature lunged forward, swirling with furious energy, its arms stretching towards me like jagged branches from a twisted tree. I barely had time to react as the shadows closed in, but somehow, I swung the pipe towards it, feeling the rush of air as it sliced through the darkness. The connection sent a ripple through the atmosphere, a wave that knocked me back against the nearby wall. I gasped, the impact stunning me, but something curious happened. The creature shuddered. Its monstrous form flickered like a weak flame in the wind, weak and unsteady. My friends rallied around me, their determination rekindled by what we had witnessed. "Again!" Jamie shouted, rallying the group. Together, fueled by our united front, we charged once more. We swung our beams of light wildly, illuminating the shadowy figure that had taken up residence in our hearts from the moment the storm began. Each flash of light sent bursts of energy into the creature, piercing through its form, revealing writhing shadows struggling to maintain their shape. The figure roared, a guttural sound that resonated deep, rattling the bones in my chest. It reached toward the nearest window, the shadows stretching like dark tendrils aiming to snag us, to drag us down into whatever abyss it inhabited. I could feel its desperate grip reaching for my soul, trying to extinguish the resistance we were building. "Don't let it touch you," I screamed, heart racing as I fought to keep the beam steady. I felt a sense of urgency. We had to maintain our momentum, keeping it at bay long enough to break whatever hold it had on this storm. Just then, out of sheer instinct, I swung the pipe downward, hoping to break whatever tether it had to our world. The cold metal screamed against the concrete floor, sending vibrations through the space. For a moment, there was silence. An eerie calm enveloped us. And then, with a flash brighter than any before, the shadows screamed, fracturing like glass, dispersing into the storm outside. The force of their departure rattled the house, like a sudden gust racing through the cracks. "Look!" Ethan shouted, pointing toward the window where the shadows had been. "It's fading." Outside, the storm began to abate, the wind losing its furious edge. I glanced out to see lights flicker in the world outside, as if we had severed the creature's grip on the storm. But just as hope filled my chest, I noticed something strange amidst the chaos, something creeping forward in the fading light. "What is that?" Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse, eyes wide with terror. Emerging from the darkness, a figure, cloaked in the last remnants of shadow, moved slowly toward us. I realized with horror that it was too small to be the creature we'd fought. It appeared childlike, its features blurred and indistinct, with hollow eyes, echoes of misplaced joy and sorrow. "Help me," the whisper emerged, drifting toward us like a mournful song. My heart sank as realization struck. This was no mere storm. It was a trap, a test, and the figure in front of us, though innocent in appearance, bore a darkness that wrapped tightly around it. Is it a spirit?" Jamie stuttered, pulling back as fear filled her voice. "We don't know what it wants," I shouted, the truth leaving my mouth like an unraveling thread. As the figure approached, curling tendrils of shadow unfurling from its body, I felt a cold fear grasping me again, threatening to drag me into its depths. "Stay back," I commanded, raising the pipe again, fear mixing with instinctive protectiveness. "What do you want?" The storm outside swirled back into a frenzy, echoing the uncertainty brewing in my heart, and I stood my ground. The whispers grew louder, intertwining with the howling wind, knotting around my mind like chains forged from regret. It was closing in, and I knew in that moment we hadn't escaped yet. As the childlike figure approached, my heart raced, each beat echoing the whispers swirling around us. "Help me," it called again, the voice a haunting melody cloaked in despair. My friends drew back, their fear palpable, and I could feel doubt creeping into my own mind, trying to claw away the resolve that had carried me this far. The shadows flickered around it like smoke curling from a flame, bringing an unsettling chill to the air that permeated my skin. I could see the outline of the figure more clearly now, its eyes wide and vacant, but filled with a tragic longing that ripped at something deep within me. I knew I should be afraid, but something in that desolate gaze tugged at my heartstrings, compelling me to listen. "What happened to you?" I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady, knowing that fear wouldn't help. "Are you trapped?" The wind howled in response, and the figure hesitated, tilting its head slightly as if weighing my words. I was lost," it replied, a tremor in its voice that echoed the thunder rumbling outside. "Cold, too cold. They took me." The words sent a shiver down my spine as I realized what it meant. The shadows swirling around it pulsed in rhythm with the storm, feeding off its despair. "What do you mean by they?" I pressed, the urgency in my voice breaking through the mounting fear. "Are you part of the storm?" The figure stepped closer, and I saw something strange in its movements, an eerie, unnatural grace tinged with desperation. As it drew nearer, tendrils of darkness reached for my feet, dragging at my heels as if the very ground itself sought to anchor me to this nightmare. A panic surged within, and my instinct screamed at me to flee. "Please don't go," it begged, the sorrow in its voice thickening the air into something almost tangible. "I can help you. I know the way out. Help us?" Ethan gasped, his voice trembling with confusion. "Why would we trust you?" "Because I want to be free." The creature's eyes glowed with a haunting light, and the shadows twisted violently around it, crackling with dark energy. "I was once like you, but they took everything. They're coming for you. You have to listen." The storm roared outside, the wind intensifying with each plea as if it were echoing the tension growing within the basement. The very air around us felt electric, charged with a sense of impending doom. I took a step back, gripping the metal pipe tighter, unsure of what to believe. "You're lying. This is just a trick," I shouted, my heart pounding as I sensed the darkness conspiring against us all. "No, I swear." The creature's voice rose in anguish. "You have to believe me." Before I could respond, a rush of wind slammed the door shut behind us, cutting off our escape. The walls shuddered, the very foundation trembling under the weight of the storm's fury. I glanced at my friends. They were pale, their eyes wide with terror as they backed away from the creature, unsure of what to do next. "Get away from it," Jamie shouted, fear coursing through her voice. "It's trying to manipulate you." But in that moment, I felt a strange connection to the figure. I couldn't explain it, a flicker of understanding, of shared loneliness that coursed through me. "Wait, let's hear what it has to say." The moment I said those words, the atmosphere shifted again, thick shadows swirling as the storm gathered strength, the thunder crashing above us like a war cry. I couldn't fight the coming dread. It filled the room, pressing down on all of us as the air grew stifling hot amidst the chill from the shadowed figure. "Listen," it implored, reaching out, fingers stretching like twisted vines. "You're running out of time. The storm is hungry. It swallows those who linger too long in the dark. What do you want us to do?" I stammered, feeling the pull of its words, an impossible urge to lean in and seek the truth. Together, it breathed, urgency lacing through every syllable. "You need to summon the light inside yourselves. Only then can you break the spell holding this storm captive. But it has to be genuine. The fear must be cast aside." "But how?" Ethan asked, desperation creeping into his tone. "How do we do that?" "You have to let go of your fear. Let it burn away." The figure's voice trembled with intensity, and for a moment, the shadows yielded, revealing a flicker of brightness behind it. I felt a warmth rising within me, mixed with the cold that had enveloped us since the storm began. As if reading my thoughts, the figure urged, "It's there, deep inside. Let it rise up." The storm roared around us, a cacophony of rage, but I focused on the warmth blooming within. My heart pounded, matching the rhythm of my fears. I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment, letting the dread wash over me, feeling the weight of it all as it clawed for power, and I opened myself to the truth within. "I'm not afraid," I shouted suddenly, pushing against the storm's pressure. "We're stronger than this." Slowly, my friends began to echo my words. "We won't fall," Jamie shouted, her voice rising, mingling with the winds outside, refusing to be silenced. The creature's form shimmered, the shadows caving around us, almost blending into the chaotic dance of the storm as we all joined together. The shadows recoiled as our collective courage surged, brightening the dark corners of the room. With every word we shouted, the air pulsed, and I could feel the warmth enveloping us like a shield. The creature swayed and pulled back slightly, the light pushing against it. Not hostile, but a force of unity that sought to free it rather than destroy. A screech filled the air, a guttural contraction against the rising storm, like it was fighting back against us, biting against our resolve. I trembled but pushed onward. "Let us help you," I cried, feeling my voice intertwine with my friends. "Let us all be free." Suddenly, a blinding flash illuminated the basement, spilling out into the storm's chaos. The creature writhed, shadows peeling away like old paint, revealing flashes of its true form. Half child, half lost spirit, its agony mingling with a flicker of hope in its sorrowful eyes. Together, it managed to plead, the urgency of its voice desperate against the howl of the wind. We stood tall, focused on the figure, casting our light into the restless storm. With each pulse of courage, I could see the creature struggle to hold its shape, the shadows clenched around it losing their grip as they churned away. With one final surge, the storm threw all its fury at us, but we stood strong, united in purpose. Each breath echoed our unyielding pledge. Together, we shouted in unison, and as the storm howled around us, the light within us blazed. In that moment of collective strength, bright energy surged forth, wrapping around the childlike figure, merging with its darkness. The shadows flared and burst like fireworks, illuminating even the darkest corners of the basement. "Make it brighter," it urged, the essence of its spirit entwining with ours as flashes of light erupted from our hands. The scream reverberated through the storm, rising in intensity, transforming from pain into a cacophony of freedom. The shadows curled back, drawn into a vortex, retreating from the power we wielded. Outside, the storm began to break apart, the clouds unraveling, allowing beams of moonlight to cut through the chaos, singing as they touched our skin. We had done it, but as the winds died and the darkness retreated, the childlike figure paused, gazing back at me, a sorrowful expression lingering on its fading form. "Thank you," it whispered. "Now we are all free." And just like that, it vanished, swallowed by the surge of light, and with it, the storm dissipated, leaving behind a calm silence, an echo of the battle fought within. I turned to my friends, still stunned, hearts racing, realizing together we had faced the darkness that sought to consume us. This is over, right?" Sarah's voice trembled as we stepped outside, the cool air brushing gently against our faces, grounding us in reality. But deep down, I knew even as the tempest faded, the shadows of that night would linger in my mind, a reminder of the horrors lurking just beyond the light. As the storm finally settled, a thick fog began to roll in, enveloping the ground in a grayish shroud. I could barely make out the shapes of my friends, their faces still reflecting the terror we had just experienced. Each breath I took felt heavy, and the silence that followed was almost deafening, leaving the echoes of our cries hanging in the air like ghosts. "Is it really over?" Jamie asked, her voice cracking slightly. I wanted to reassure her, to say that we had emerged victorious, but a nagging, uneasy gnawed at my gut. "I don't know," I replied, gazing into the mist. It felt like a blanket wrapping around us, heavy and suffocating. In every shadow, I thought I could see movement, an unsettling reminder of the horrors we had just confronted. We started walking away from the basement, our footsteps heavy against the damp earth, but even the sound of our movements felt muted, swallowed by the eerie stillness. The air smelled sweet, yet rotting at the same time, a strange combination that made me cringe. Rounding the corner of the house, I paused, spotting something in the distance through the fog. "Do you see that?" I whispered, hardly wanting to voice the fear pooling in my stomach. My friend squinted, shifting nervously beside me. "What is it?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a murmur. There was a flickering light ahead, like a lantern swaying in the darkness. It pulsed softly, almost beckoning, and an inexplicable urge pulled at me to move toward it. "It looks like someone's out there," I said, feeling a mix of curiosity and caution. "Maybe we shouldn't get any closer," Sarah warned, her eyes darting nervously around us, scanning for hidden dangers. But something inside me yearned for answers. After everything we had witnessed, I needed to know if there was truly someone else out there. "I have to check it out," I decided, stepping forward against the weight of their apprehension. As the distance between us and the light shrank, I felt a chill slither down my spine. The fog thickened, creeping around my ankles like lost souls searching for warmth. I turned to my friends, urging them to come along, but they hesitated. "Stay close," I called, feeling a surge of unease but pushing it aside. The light flickered again, and I stepped into the clearing. What met my eyes wasn't a person at all. Instead, it was an old lantern hanging from a gnarled tree. The light flickered weakly, as if it had fought to stay alive against the elements. Around its base lay scattered trinkets, broken toys, and children's shoes, weathered and decayed. "What is this place?" I whispered, kneeling down to examine the relics left behind. The sight of the toys made my chest tighten with a strange sorrow. Each piece seemed to tell a story, a history of forgotten laughter replaced by silence. Just then, a low groan echoed through the mist, sending chills racing up my arms. "Did you hear that?" I jumped to my feet, eyes darting around for the source. My friends rushed forward, fear etched on their faces. "We need to go back," Jamie pleaded, stepping away from the gnarled tree. She looked unnerved, and I wondered if she could sense the unsettling presence that felt like it was creeping closer. Taking a deep breath, I collected my thoughts. Just a little longer, I encouraged, trying to stay steady. "Let's see if there's anything else here." The groan came again, louder this time, a haunting echo that sent fear rippling through my very being. I felt an icy grip around my throat, tightening with every passing second. It wasn't just a sound. It was a warning, a refrain of despair that seemed to resonate within the land itself. Suddenly, something rustled in the bushes nearby, and I turned sharply, my heartbeat hammering in my chest. "What was that?" I gasped, my voice trembling. Ethan stepped back, his eyes wide, raw panic overtaking his features. "I don't want to find out." But curiosity overcame my trepidation, and I stepped closer to the sound. We all remained still, trying to gather our courage, when a figure emerged from the mist, stumbling forward. At first, I thought it was a person, but as it drew closer, I froze. It was a child, skin pale and sunken, clothes tattered and muddy, their eyes wide and hollow, reflecting a hollow emptiness that made my blood run cold. "Help me," it rasped, voice barely rising above a whisper, and my heart sank as my stomach twisted in knots. "Get away from it," Sarah shouted, pulling at my arm, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the child. "Please," the figure begged, stepping forward, its small hands extended as if reaching for something just out of grasp. "I can't find my way home." My mind raced. Something felt wrong. Like this was a trick, a cruel repetition of the events we'd just escaped. We can't trust it," I stammered, trying to pull myself back to reality. But an odd compulsion gripped me, a soft yearning to help, the horrific connection to our earlier encounter with the spirit. It felt similar, But this child radiated an even deeper despair, one that clawed at my heart. "It's not real!" Jamie shouted again, her voice sharper now, echoing my own panic. As the child inched closer, I could hear the faint rustling from behind it, shadows skittering through the mist, swirling around its frail figure. I felt dread coiling tight, and I realized we had no idea what was truly happening here. "Get back," I warned, voice trembling with uncertainty, and suddenly, with a rush of movement, the shadows erupted, crawling around the child like dark serpents, spiraling upward, their whispers growing louder, filling my head with chilling echoes. "Help me," they cried, the tones shifting like a dissonant chorus, blending the voices of sadness and torment. "Run!" Ethan shouted, panic bursting from him as he turned, breaking away from the haunting figure. Regardless of fear, I felt rooted in place, compelled by an unseen force. I wanted to take a step back, to escape the chaos, yet I remained frozen, curiosity battling against the instinct to flee. The shadows rushed forward, engulfing the child, swallowing it whole as it let out a scream that pierced through the mist. My heart hammered in my chest, and I finally turned, racing after Ethan and Jamie, leaving the dreadful echoes behind. "Where do we go?" Jamie shouted, her voice cracking as the fog swirled, obscuring our path. "Back to the house," I gasped, confusion swirling in the tumult of my mind. Desperation propelled us forward, but with every step, I felt a pull like an anchor, warning me the shadows would not let us escape easily. As we ran, I could still hear the whispers trailing behind me, clinging to my thoughts, each syllable a reminder of what we had just witnessed. The storm may have dissipated, but the darkness had not, lurking just beyond our sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. My breath came in ragged gasps, and I strained to look back but didn't dare. The further we ran, the more I felt the very air grow thick with a sense of foreboding, a warning that this battle was far from over. "We need to hurry," I panted, urgency spilling into every word. "I feel it coming." But as we reached the porch, a chill swept through the air, freezing us in place. The front door, once a sanctuary, now stood ominously ajar, creaking slowly with the weight of our dread. "No!" Jamie screamed, stumbling back. "We can't go in there?" But an instinct overwhelmed me, an unsettling feeling that whatever awaited us inside would decide our fate. "We have to." We stepped inside, hearts pounding, shadows playing tricks against the walls. The air was thick with tension, and the whispers were louder now, rising from the corners of the room. As we crossed the threshold, a feeling washed over me, a sense of dread that this house was alive, watching, waiting to see what we would do next. And then the door slammed shut behind us. As the door slammed shut behind us, the sound echoed through the empty halls like a warning bell. I turned to my friends, their faces distorted with fear and confusion, but there was no time for doubt. The house seemed to breathe around us, its walls shifting just out of sight. "Stay close," I whispered, though my own voice trembled with uncertainty. The dim light from the windows was almost swallowed by the shadows, casting elongated silhouettes around us, twisting them into ghostly figures. Moving deeper into the house, I could feel the air grow cold, biting at my skin. The atmosphere was thick with an invisible weight, like we were being watched. My heart raced, a frantic rhythm that seemed to thrum louder with each step. Strange sounds filtered through the silence, soft whispers that I couldn't quite understand, as if the very walls were sharing secrets I was never meant to know. "What is happening?" Ethan muttered, his voice barely above a whisper, tension clenching around his words. "I don't know," I replied, dread pooling in my stomach. "But we need to find a way out." As we ventured through the narrow hallway, the shadows stretched along the walls, flickering with a life of their own. Each step seemed to echo louder than the last, creating a rhythm of fear that thrummed beneath our feet. Suddenly, we heard a loud bang, a door slamming somewhere far away in the house, and we all jumped, adrenaline rushing through our veins. "Did you hear that?" Sarah gasped, her eyes wide as she glanced around. The shadows shifted again, whispering softly, brushing against my ears. "Stay," they seemed to say, pulling me deeper. I shook my head, trying to push away the sensation, but the air felt charged, electric, like something was beckoning me forward. "Come on," I urged, wishing for a light to guide us. But there was only darkness looming ahead, ready to swallow us whole. I stepped cautiously, testing the floorboards, half expecting them to creak like a warning or give way beneath me. Just then, a sharp pain shot through my chest, and I gasped, stumbling back. It felt like icy fingers were burrowing into my heart, squeezing tighter. "Something's wrong," I said, fear washing over me in waves. "Maybe we should leave," Jamie suggested, glancing back toward the door, but it felt like a lifetime away, an impossible escape. Each second ticked by slowly, each moment infused with a sense of impending doom. We moved further into the heart of the house, compelled by an unknown force drawing us in. The walls began to close around us, the narrow hallway curving in unnatural ways, and I could hear faint weeping mingling with the whispers. It was heart-wrenching, a soft wail that echoed through the corridors, wrapping around us like a shroud. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaky, yet filled with a stubborn resolve. There was no answer, only the chilling sound of laughter that twisted in my gut. It came from deeper within the house, mingling with the whispers, a blend of mirth and malice that sent shivers down my spine. "We should go back," Ethan insisted, his voice rising with anxiety as the laughter faded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were getting closer to something we needed to confront. I moved forward, driven by an instinct I couldn't ignore. Each step felt heavier, as if the house itself wanted to pull us down into its depths. My heart raced, matching the rapid pace of my thoughts, the creeping dread colliding with an irresistible urge to uncover the truth. As we turned a corner, a door suddenly appeared, its frame adorned with intricate carvings that looked almost alive, twisting into figures that seemed to dance in the shadows. I reached for the handle, feeling the cold metal bite against my palm. "Wait!" Sarah hissed, grabbing my arm, her grip fierce as though she sensed something sinister. "We don't know what's in there." But before I could argue, the door creaked open on its own, revealing a dimly lit room cloaked in an uneasy gloom. Inside, shadows danced along the walls, flickering in rhythm with something unseen. I stepped inside, curiosity and fear battling for control. What lay in the center of the room took my breath away. A circle of old, dusty photographs scattered across the floor, each image depicting faces of children, their expressions trapped in forever frozen smiles. I picked one up, feeling its weight as a cold chill swept through me. The child's eyes seemed to follow me, reflecting a darkness that I could hardly comprehend. "These kids, what happened to them?" I whispered, horror creeping into each word as my hands trembled. "Don't touch them," Jamie cried, stepping back, but it was too late. As I glanced around the room, the photographs began to shift, their expressions mutating into looks of pain and sorrow, mouths stretching wide as silent screams echoed in the air. My blood ran ice cold. "Get out! Get out now!" I shouted, dropping the picture, but it was as if the house had come alive, pulsating around us in chaotic response. The walls shuddered, and the laughter returned, more sinister this time, echoing perverse glee throughout the room. The door slammed shut behind us, trapping us within the confines of that accursed space. Panic surged through me, and I turned to my friends, their faces blanched with fear, eyes wide with confusion. Just then, the light began to flicker, casting long shadows against the walls that twisted and writhed as if in pain. An unnatural wind surged through the room, pulling at our clothes, dragging the photographs into a swirling vortex at the center. "Look!" Ethan shouted, pointing to the wall. Through the flickering light, I saw the shadows forming a grotesque image. It was a giant face, twisted and contorted, rising from the darkness, its eyes glowing with an unearthly light. "You're too late," it hissed, the voice emerging from the walls like a thunderous echo, filled with malice and intent. I could feel it pulling at my soul, tugging me deeper into despair as the shadows coalesced, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. "We have to fight back," I screamed, desperation clawing at my throat. "Together," Jamie shouted, joining hands with the others, and a spark ignited within me. Gritting my teeth, I focused on that flicker of light we'd summoned before, letting it rise in defiance against the encroaching darkness. The shadows recoiled, hissing at us, their form twisting as if in pain. "You don't belong here," the face growled, its voice low and rumbling. "You cannot escape what is yours." But I pushed forward, refusing to let fear take hold again. "No, we will not be taken," I bellowed, channeling every ounce of courage and defiance. The light blazed brighter, and the shadowy face twisted in anguish, its grip beginning to falter. "You think you can resist eternity?" I felt the shadows pull once more, their whispering voices wrapping around me. But I fought against them, calling on the strength of my friends, our bonds forged in terror. With a final push, the light burst forth, flooding the room and breaking the claustrophobic hold of the darkness. The laughter turned into screams, echoes reverberating through the house as it began to shake violently. "Run!" I yelled, and with clarity in the chaos, we bolted for the door as the very ground trembled beneath us. Shadows twisted and clawed at our backs, shadows whispering our names as we raced back down the hallway, the house trying to drag us back into its depths. We dashed from the room, hands interlinked, adrenaline propelling us through the narrowing passages. The shadows fought fiercely, flinging tendrils toward us, but we held fast. "Out! We need to get out!" Ethan shouted, and as we neared the staircase, the floorboards groaned beneath us, splintering under the weight of our haste. But the door to freedom was just ahead, a thin sliver of hope shining through the darkness. I pushed Ethan forward, urging everyone to follow. "Keep moving! Don't look back!" We fled up the stairs, the air thick with desperation as the house thundered in protest, its shadows elongating, begging for our return. Each step felt as if the darkness was at our heels, ready to drag us back into its clutches. At last, we crashed through the door and stumbled out into the night, gasping for breath as the cool air washed over us. The fog began to lift, and the weight that had pressed down on us began to fade. But as we turned to look back at the house, silhouetted against the fading mist, I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't escaped yet. The whispers lingered in the back of my mind, a reminder that the shadows may have retreated, but they would always be waiting for the moment when our guard was down. A horrifying thought twisted in my gut. What if we were marked now, forever tied to this darkness? The night grew still, but I knew that the stories this place held would echo within me, reminding me that fear wasn't easily shaken. And this realization struck deep, a gnawing realization that whatever had taken place remained woven into the fabric of our souls, waiting patiently for its chance to return. The chill in the air was unsettling, even outside the house, and as we stood there, catching our breath, I couldn't shake the feeling we weren't safe. My heart raced, pounding out a frantic rhythm, while my friends frantically looked around, searching for something, anything, that could assure us we'd truly escaped. "What just happened?" Sarah asked, her voice shaky as she wrapped her arms around herself, staring wide-eyed at the house behind us. "I don't know," I replied, still reeling from the claustrophobic terror that had engulfed us inside. "But I feel like it's not finished with us." Just then, a gust of wind swept through the yard, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver down my spine. I glanced back at the house, the door standing eerily ajar, a dark invitation in the dim moonlight. Shadows flickered in the windows, seeming to dance with a life of their own, taunting us from within. "Maybe we should get as far away as possible," Ethan suggested, taking a step back, but I felt rooted, the pull of curiosity battling against the fear inside me. "Wait," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What if we miss something? What if something is still trapped in there?" "Are you serious?" Jamie snapped, eyes wide as she shook her head. We barely got out alive. We're not going back in there. But the longing to understand what had happened clawed at me. I need to know what that face meant, I insisted, clenching my fists at my sides. It felt like it was connected to us. Before I could muster any more courage, another wind gust hit us, stronger this time, swirling leaves around like a tempest. I watched, horrified, as the air seemed to shimmer, and from the edge of the property, an apparition emerged. It was a figure cloaked in mist, drifting slowly towards us, face obscured. My heart raced as it glided nearer, the sound of soft weeping hanging in the air like a funeral dirge. "Did you see that?" Ethan gasped, taking a step back, almost stumbling over his own feet. I started, but the words died in my throat as the figure drew closer. "Help me," it croaked, voice dripping with sorrow. Instinctively, I took a step forward, feeling an inexplicable connection to the wailing spirit. "Please find my way home." "No!" Jamie cried, yanking on my arm, panic lacing her voice. "Don't go near it." But I felt a magnetic pull, an inexplicable urge to comfort the lost soul. "What happened to you?" I found myself asking, unable to stop the question from spilling out. The figure emerged from the shadows, revealing a child with hollow cheeks and sunken eyes, sadness etched into every feature. "I can't leave," it whispered, looking directly at me, pleading with a hollow gaze that felt like ice. Suddenly the ground shook beneath our feet, sending shockwaves through the air. A low rumble filled the night, and I stumbled back, heart racing even faster. The house seemed to groan, and I watched in horror as cracks formed along its wooden frame, light flickering through like fingers clawing for release. "Run!" I shouted, breaking free from the trance. We turned on our heels, sprinting away from the apparition, but the air crackled with energy, chasing us like a thunderstorm about to erupt. A piercing shriek echoed behind me, causing my stomach to drop. "You can't escape," the voice cried, sounding furious like a storm raging against the night. We dashed toward the tree line, the thick fog swirling around our legs, making every step feel like it was weighted by unseen hands. My thoughts raced, desperately searching for a safe haven or even some kind of clue about what was truly haunting us. "Where do we go?" Ethan shouted as branches clawed at us, snagging our clothes and tearing at our skin. "We can't keep running forever." "Chill." I hushed, pointing ahead toward a small clearing up ahead. "There! We can hide there!" We ran, stumbling into the wide space, but it offered no solace. The moon hung overhead like an unsung sentinel, casting long shadows that wrapped around us. Something was wrong, far more wrong, as the figures of the children from the photographs flitted through the trees, wailing softly, voices melding like a haunting melody. "Why won't they leave us alone?" Sarah cried, her voice breaking as she clutched her mouth. I felt the tears sting my eyes, but I forced them back. "I don't know. We have to stay together." But as I looked around, something shifted in the fog. It wasn't just ghosts or memories. It was deeper, darker. Shapes formed out of the mist, blocking any hope of escape, looming closer as the air thickened, wrapped in winter's chill. "They're coming for us," Jamie whispered, her eyes glazed with fear. Suddenly, the ground beneath us shattered with the echo of anguished cries. I fell to my knees, feeling a pull beneath me like something was crawling up from the earth. The ground writhed, roots breaking through, twisting and curling like serpents, reaching for our ankles and tugging us down. "Help!" I screamed, but my voice felt swallowed by the nightmare that had become our reality. The children emerged from the fog, their faces twisted in grief and anger. "You shouldn't have come," they shrieked in unison, their voices rising like a tempest, echoing in the stillness. "No!" I shouted, scrambling back, but the roots wrapped tightly around my legs, dragging me toward the gaping earth. My heart pounded against my ribs, adrenaline surging through me. "Not like this! Pull me!" I yelled to my friends, my voice faint against the rising screams around us. Straining against the grip of the roots, I felt them tighten further, dragging me into the dark, the shadows swallowing me whole. "Hold on!" Ethan shouted, lunging forward, grabbing my arms just as the ground threatened to consume me. The terror on his face mirrored my own, and for a moment, I felt absolutely lost, the children's wailing overwhelming my senses. We were on the brink of being pulled under, engulfed by the very night that had begun this nightmare. With a fierce determination, Jamie grabbed my other arm, and together they pulled, their strength igniting a flicker of hope within me. I thrusted my legs, kicking against the earth, fighting to stay above ground. As the roots uncoiled, I was propelled backward, landing hard on my back. I gasped for breath, eyes wide as I watched the children retreating, vanishing into the fog like shadows at dawn, their cries fading alongside them. For a moment, silence enveloped us. The world had grown still, as if time itself held its breath, waiting for the inevitable dread to rise again. I think we're okay," Ethan panted as we tried to gather our senses, but a lingering darkness brushed against my skin, leaving me grasping for reassurance. "Are we?" I whispered, my voice shaking. "What if they come back?" But before we could catch our breath, a low rumble resonated from the house, a sound filled with pure malice that echoed through the trees. The ground beneath us trembled once more, a stark reminder that this nightmare wasn't over yet. "We can't go back," Jamie stated firmly, fear raging in her eyes. But the call of the darkness tugged at my mind, an unsettling itch that wouldn't fade. "Wait, what if we have to face it? What if there's more we need to uncover?" I could see Jamie's apprehension, her body tense against the encroaching shadows. "You really think we can just march back in there?" "I don't know, but we can't just leave," I replied, biting my lip. "There's something here, something we need to confront." In that moment, I knew we were imprisoned not just by the house, but by the weight of our own fears. Taking a deep breath, as leaves rustled ominously around us, I made up my mind. Together or not at all, I stated resolutely, feeling a flicker of defiance illuminate the shadows. Despite our terror, my friends nodded, the glimmer of courage igniting within us. We turned back toward the house, the threat looming behind us as we walked up to its steps once more. Whatever awaited us inside, we needed to confront it together. With each step toward the door, a sense of stillness enveloped us, the shadows lurking at the edges, teasing and mocking. Dread washed over me, but I steeled my resolve. I could hear the echoes of the past, whispering secrets hidden away, calling to me, urging me to understand the darkness we had encountered. As we crossed the threshold, the darkness closed in around us once again. The door creaked shut behind us with a heavy finality, the darkness swallowing any hopes of escape. Fog roiled at the edges of the room, creeping along the floor like a living thing, and I could hear distant whispers tracing around me, voices layered over each other, echoing with desperate cries. I felt that familiar chill creeping up my spine, an overpowering sensation that something was watching from the shadows, valuing our every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The air was thick with the smell of decay and mildew. My heart thudded in my chest, pounding harder with each step. "What now?" I whispered, even though I knew my friends were just as afraid. They looked as tense as I felt, glancing nervously toward the hallway from which we'd narrowly escaped moments ago. "Do we have to go back to that room?" Ethan asked, his voice strained with uncertainty. It felt like a nightmare in there. "Yes," I replied, despite the dread gripping my insides. "We need to understand what happened. There has to be some clue." I moved forward, each step echoing in the silence as we tread cautiously. My gaze locked on the narrow hallway ahead. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, leading me deeper into the darkness. I could taste the fear, metallic and bitter, tangling with the choking air. As we crept along, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was shifting around us, altering itself to trap us like prey. The wallpaper seemed to pulse with life, clocking into grotesque forms that sneered and leered at us with unholy glee. I thought I saw familiar faces among the shapes, but when I blinked, they were gone, just figments of a twisted imagination fueled by fear. "Look," Jamie squeaked, pointing to an old mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. It looked out of place, like it held a weight of history within its thin frame. As we approached, I felt a strange pull toward it. The mirror flickered, briefly reflecting the ghostly images of the children we had seen outside. Their faces twisted in agony, their mouths opening in silent screams. My breath hitched as the voice of the child echoed again in my mind, repeating its plea for help. "Find my way home. Don't get too close," Ethan warned, but my feet moved of their own accord. I couldn't look away from the haunting reflections, the sadness suffocating me in waves. Suddenly, the mirror's surface rippled like water stirred by an unseen hand. I reached out, fingertips brushing against the cold glass. A painful surge traveled through me like static electricity, an electric jolt that ignited every nerve. I gasped as images transformed. Writhing shadows began to swirl behind my reflection, dark figures inching closer and closer, their intentions hidden in the depths of the glass. The air turned icy, a sharp contrast to the warmth of our bodies, and the whispers intensified, merging into one piercing chorus that echoed in my mind. "You should have left. You will become one of us." A wave of terror washed over me as the figures behind me started to thrust their limbs through the shimmering surface, their arms thin and unnatural, clawing at the air, drawing closer to my vulnerable frame. I could feel their icy breath send a shiver down my spine. "Rip it off! Get away from there!" Jamie screamed. I yanked my hand back just as a shadow flickered through the glass, its face a horrific mask of rage and despair. In that fleeting moment, I felt a connection, a shared pain of entrapment that tethered me to the dark forces within this cursed house. My skin crawled as I staggered backward, struggling to regain my breath. "Are you all right?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking through the fog of dread. I could see fear etched deep across her features. I don't know," I stammered, shaking off the lingering chills that now wrapped around me like vines. That mirror had shown me something, though I wasn't sure if it was a memory or a warning. The sensation of being trapped was suffocating, pressing against my chest until my heart felt like it might explode. The atmosphere shifted again, heavy and suffused with an unfathomable darkness. The shadows began to fathom shapes, lurking at the periphery of my vision. As I turned back toward the narrow hallway, whispers filled the air, growing louder and more insistent. Downstairs, the voices drifted, coiling around me, like tendrils snaking through my thoughts. "Come play with us?" I shivered, instinctively stepping back, but something pulled me forward. This wasn't just fear. This was a call, alluring and deadly. "What if we go down?" "Are you serious?" Jamie's eyes grew wide, her voice shrill. "That's where all of this started. We have to get out. Maybe it's a mistake to ignore it. We need to confront whatever is down there," I insisted, heart racing. Together, though we were reluctant, we made our way toward the staircase, the air growing thicker and more oppressive with each step. The soft creaking of the old wood echoed ominously beneath us, a warning of what was waiting below. As we descended, the walls closed in, shadows swallowing the staircase whole, the darkness wrapping around us like the tendrils of a long-lost nightmare. Each step felt like entering a grave, welcoming and still, pulling us downward into the abyss. As we reached the bottom, a foul smell hit me in the face, rot and despair mingling in the cool, dank air. I could barely see through the gloom, but the outlines of the walls shifted, closing us in a constricting embrace. Shapes loomed in the corners, flickering like candles on the verge of blowing out. "Is there something down here?" Ethan whispered, voice barely audible, as fear gnawed at his composure. "I think so," I replied, squinting into the darkness. "Listen." And then I heard it, a low moan that resonated through the silence, a sound filled with sorrow, a crying voice deep and resonant. My heart raced as I felt it beckoning to me, The familiar feeling of drawing closer to something terrible and inevitable. It felt recognizable. A familiar dark friend. "Is it the children?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper, teetering on the brink of tears. I nodded, feeling my resolve falter. "We have to see. We owe it to them." The moaning grew louder, more frantic. There was a desperation in that sound, a need that was impossible to ignore. I took a step forward, trembling as the shadows thickened around us, constricting like a vice. As I reached out, I felt an overwhelming surge of dread, the ground quaking beneath my feet, drawing me closer toward the source. Every rational thought slipped through my fingers as I was overcome by that irresistible urge to uncover the truth hidden within the darkness. And then, out of the shadows, emerged a figure. It was a tall silhouette, one that seemed familiar but grotesque, the outline morphing into something disturbing, giving shape to a twisted sense of déjà vu. My breath caught as I recognized the outline. It looked like me, but not quite. Its features were distorted, eyes gleaming with malevolence, pulling me in as an echo of my own kind. "Welcome back," it hissed, a voice that was both mine and not mine, dripping with malice as the shadows surged to swallow the last rays of hope. Just as I felt the chill wrap tighter around me, the shadows burst forth, swallowing everything in their path. A maelstrom of darkness crashing against the walls, the cries of despair rising to a fever pitch, blending into one chaotic symphony. Filled with anguish, the walls quaked under the pressure, ready to collapse as I struggled against the darkness clawing at my ankles. I threw my hands up, instinctively shielding myself from the looming terror. The figure leaned closer, revealing a ragged smile, one filled with torment and longing, darkness creeping from its skin like smoke. "Join us," it pleaded, voice echoing like poison in my blood. "No!" I gasped in defiance, my voice rising above the torment that surrounded me. The sound of my voice seemed to reverberate through the chaos, drowning out the howling cries. For a split second, I felt a pulse of power surge through me, igniting a spark of rebellion. We had come too far to give in now. I felt a surge of energy pulse through me, defiance rising like a fire igniting in my chest. The oppressive darkness recoiled slightly, as if surprised by my sudden strength. I took a step back, shaking off the shadows that clawed at my feet, and focused on that twisted reflection of myself. "No, I won't join you," I yelled, voice echoing in the deepness, trembling yet filled with an uprising fury. The figure faltered, its grin faltering for just a moment, revealing a flicker of uncertainty that I seized upon to gather my courage. The air was thick with despair, and the wails grew louder, drowning out the echo of my heartbeat. I could hear my friends behind me, echoing the same fears. "What are we going to do?" Sarah's voice broke through the clamoring chaos, filled with uncertainty. "We got to fight this," I shouted over the din, drawing strength from the determination building inside of me. The shadows seemed to swirl in a frenzy, flickering and dancing chaotically as if aware of the tension rising in the air. I felt the eyes of the figure burning into me, an intense gaze that made my skin crawl. Suddenly, the darkness exploded around me, tendrils snaking toward my friends, dragging them closer to that ghastly vision. Jamie yelped, struggling against the grip, her body almost buckling under the weight of the shadows. "Help me," she cried, panic blending with terror as she reached for me. "No!" I screamed, lunging forward toward her, adrenaline flooding my veins. As I pulled her back, the shadows writhed like a living entity, lashing out at us. But this time, I was ready. I focused on the strength of our bond and unleashed my fear, gritting my teeth as I shouted, "You're not getting her!" The darkness hesitated, swirling around us as if momentarily confused by my sudden bravery. I could feel the energy building, and I used it to push back against the void, grappling with the shadow grasping at Jamie. "We can't let it take us." She nodded, gripping my arm as tightly as she could, and together we heaved with all our might. The shadow shrieked, a piercing howl that shook the very foundations of the house, and I felt a rift form within the black mass, allowing us to break free. Ethan joined us, his eyes wide but resolute, rallying to our side as we formed an improvised front line against the encroaching darkness. "What next?" he yelled, clenching his fists, a spark igniting within him as determination shone in his eyes. "Remember the mirror?" I said, urgency bleeding into my tone. "We saw those faces trapped inside. We have to find a way to free them. It might weaken whatever this thing is." As whispers of agreement floated among us, I gestured toward a door at the end of the corridor, slightly ajar with a faint light peeking through. "That must lead to the basement. If there's a way to end this, it could be down there." We dashed toward the door, the air swirling violently around us as the figure shrieked behind us, its voice blending with the echoed cries from the shadows. "You cannot escape. You belong here." I felt my courage waver momentarily, but I pressed onward, adrenaline purging my fear and pushing my legs forward. The shadows reached out, clawing at our heels, binding us in a sticky embrace, but we weren't going to be captured again. As we burst through the door, the light revealed a small, dusty room, cluttered with old furniture and cobwebs. In one corner, a chest lay half open, filled with remnants of forgotten memories. I felt a pull in my chest, a sense of familiarity as I scanned the items within. "Look!" Jamie exclaimed, rushing forward. She pulled out a child's drawing, its paper crinkled and yellowing with age. "It's a picture of the house, and those kids." Ethan leaned over, squinting at the sketch. "Do you think they're trapped here?" he asked, hope laced with fear. "It's possible. Each of those faces might represent a piece of their soul," I said, taking the drawing from Jamie to examine it closely. "We need to find a way to release them, to save ourselves." The shadows wailed again, echoing loudly in the background, creeping nearer, a growing ruin of despair filling the space. All at once, the very walls seemed to pulse with their suffering, vibrating under the pressure of our choice. "Over there!" Ethan pointed to an old trunk sitting in the far corner. We rushed over, instinctively pulling it open, revealing layers of dust and forgotten items. But there, nestled inside, was a silver key, glinting with a strange light. As I picked it up, a surge of energy coursed through me, igniting my resolve. I didn't know what it unlocked, but I felt this was our chance to face whatever I had released. "We need to use this," I declared, the shadows shrieking angrily in response. "Where?" Jamie asked, glancing nervously around. I searched the room, looking for anything that might correlate with the key. Then I spotted it, a small locked drawer in the dresser that looked like it hadn't been touched for decades. Fumbling with the key, I felt the cold metal bite into my palm, pulsating with heat. "Here goes nothing," I muttered, finally inserting the key into the rusty lock. It turned with a stiff click, the sound swallowed by the roaring shadows behind us. With a quick pull, I yanked open the drawer, revealing a journal filled with notes and illustrations depicting the same children we saw in the mirror, their faces smiling, then distorting into expressions of desperation as they aged within its pages. My heart raced as I flipped through the brittle pages, revealing snippets of life, names, and the events leading to their untimely demise. They were trapped here, I realized aloud, the pieces falling into place. We have to help them find peace. We need to release whatever holds them in place. As I devoured the words, the air around us thickened with a smothering presence, shadows creeping closer, angry and ravenous for our attention. I could practically feel their breath on my neck, their cries urging me to put the book down, to succumb to the fear. "Quick," I urged, "we have to make a plan." Before I could blink, the room darkened, shadows stretching and swirling, creating a vortex of despair around us, pulling us down. I held the journal against my chest, heart racing as I cast a glance back at my friends. Whatever happens, we stick together. The shadows exploded into a whirlwind, engulfing the room as I braced myself. It felt as though the walls were closing in, a cascade of darkness crashing down. I gritted my teeth, knowing that we were at a turning point, the heavy weight of fate resting on our shoulders. In that swirling chaos, I felt an urgency rise within me, a primal need to protect my friends and do whatever it took to bring those lost souls home. With every ounce of courage, I shouted, "Let them go! They deserve peace." The shadows faltered, as if caught off guard by my challenge, swirling hesitantly before erupting into a cacophony of anguished cries. The air exploded with a sudden brightness, blinding and scorching, washing over us like a wave of clarity amidst the confusion. And as the noise crescendoed, I knew the time had come to either fight back or be consumed. I knew I had to make my voice heard over the chaos around us. As the shadows raged, swirling violently, I focused on the words in the journal, recalling each page filled with names and stories of the lost children. They had been trapped for far too long, their voices silenced by the darkness that now enveloped us. "Let their souls be free," I shouted, my voice cutting through the howling wind of despair. The air crackled with tension as the shadows momentarily stilled, reacting to my desperate plea. I felt my friends, Jamie and Ethan, at my sides, their presence grounding me against the onslaught of fear flooding my brain. Their eyes reflected the same fear, yet a spark of determination flashed behind them. We stood as a united front, ready to face whatever horror awaited us, even though every instinct screamed to run. Suddenly, the drawing I clutched began to glow, a soft, haunting light that pierced the gloom. The colors shimmered with an unnatural brilliance, illuminating the space around us, casting grotesque shadows that danced grotesquely on the walls. I looked back at the trunk where I found the key, noticing how the shadows seemed to flinch away from the light. Hope began to surge within me. Maybe this was our weapon. "Do you see it?" I murmured, entranced by the ethereal glow. "It's working. We can use this light against them." With a sense of urgency, I rallied my friends. "We need to show this to the shadows. We can drive them back." The uneasy tension held its breath, gathering the energy as we hoisted the drawing higher, channeling our collective strength. "We aren't afraid," I yelled, the words leaving my mouth like a battle cry, daring the darkness to react. In response, the shadows howled again, an eerie chorus that echoed deep within the house, reverberating against our thoughts. The darkness shifted, writhing like a snake cornered by light, and I could feel its anger, cold and palpable. Its spirit hung around me like a ghost, whispering of failure and despair, but I wouldn't listen. Then, from the corner of my eye, I noticed a door begin to creak open at the far end of the room. A sickly green light spilled forth, flickering uncertainly. It seemed to draw the shadows in, as if they were unwillingly pulled towards it, revealing what lay beyond. "Should we go in there?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. I felt a wave of dread wash over me, but curiosity wove a stronger thread through my gut. "We have to find out. There might be something in there that can help us, something we can use against them." With each tentative step toward the door, the unsettling energy pulsated around us like a living entity. I could hear the low moans of the children still trapped, echoing through the air, urging me onward. I took a deep breath, pushing through the fear, and stepped through the doorway. The room was strangely bright, illuminated by ghostly green light that cast everything in a surreal glow. Old, rotten furniture lay scattered, coated in layers of dust and despair. The walls pulsated, pumping waves of energy that felt like a heartbeat, mirroring the fear in my chest. As I stepped further inside, a chilling sound cut through the silence. Loud, echoing laughter that twisted and turned, growing deeper and more unsettling. The malicious delight within it sent shivers racing down my spine. It was the last sound I wanted to hear, an echo of madness ringing from every corner. I turned to Jamie and Ethan, their faces pale, eyes wide with horror. "What is that?" Jamie whispered, her voice trembling as we huddled closer. "I don't know, but we can't let it scare us. We have to keep moving," I insisted, forcing my shaky legs to carry me forward. The laughter morphed, shifting into soft sobs, muffled and broken, resonating deeply within me. It was a sound that tore at my heart, each cry reminding me of the children's trapped spirits. They were still here, desperate, forgotten. I felt the weight of my mission pressing against me, the need to help them pulling me deeper into the room. We finally reached the far wall, where a large, ornate mirror stood, covered in layers of grime. My heart raced as I approached it, the laughter rising to a fever pitch. The glass was dim and murky, but through the filth, I could see shadows flitting past. Faces of children, the same ones from the drawing, flickering in and out of existence behind the reflection. They are trapped behind the glass. I gasped, horror gripping me as I grasped the significance of the sight before me. We have to set them free. But the moment I reached out to touch the surface of the mirror, the atmosphere around us shifted dramatically. The laughter exploded into a maniacal chorus, and the mirror shook violently, a wave of energy crashing through the room. I staggered back as wisps of shadow erupted from the edges, swirling furiously. "No! Don't touch it!" Ethan shouted just as I stumbled backward, colliding with the wall behind me. The mirror warped and twisted, distorting reality before my very eyes. The shadows seeped out like ink in water, enveloping everything they touched in darkness. I could hear the cries now, echoing all around us, clawing into my mind, deepening the fear that threatened to drown me. "Look!" Jamie pointed, her voice cracking with disbelief. "The children, they're trying to reach us." I squinted through the chaos, seeing the faces emerge from the shadows, reaching out, their tiny hands pressed against the glass, eyes filled with desperation and hope. "We have to help them," I cried out, reaching for the journal once more. There must be something in here that tells us how. In the frantic moments, I flipped through the pages, insatiable for the answers that might lend us the courage to confront this nightmare. The echoes around me grew louder, agitated, as the shadows circled closer, sensing our power rising. Then, I found it, an entry that felt like a punch to the gut. It spoke of a ritual, a way to sever the ties holding their souls captive. "We have to act fast," I muttered urgently, poring over the words that felt like a lifeline amidst the chaos. "It says we need to chant their names, remember who they are. That's the only way to pull them through." Ethan and Jamie nodded, gathering strength as we braced ourselves, determination replacing the fear that had once paralyzed us. "We can do this," I murmured, looking them in the eyes, sharing an unspoken bond of bravery. "Let's do it," Jamie replied, steeling herself. We turned, locked onto the swirling mass of shadows and the distorted laughter creeping around us. With deep breaths, we began to chant, repeating the names we had seen in the journal, our voices intertwining in a cacophony of hope amidst terror. As we called out, something shifted violently within the darkness. The laughter faltered, twisting into shrieks of rage. The children behind the mirror pressed harder, faces contorting with urgency, their voices mixing with ours. "Help us! Free us!" The very ground pulsed beneath us, an overwhelming force wrestling against our chant. My heart raced as shadows lashed out, trying to suffocate our cries. I could feel the darkness wrapping around me like chains, penetrative and cold. "Focus!" I shouted, amplifying my voice, the determination spilling over. "You won't silence us." As we pressed on, a whirlwind of energy erupted from the mirror, swirling around us, pulling the shadows back with a furious force. It intensified, the laughter turning into agonized screams, reverberating through the air as the shadows frantically writhed and roiled. The faces of the children turned hopeful, eyes brightening, yearning to break free. My voice rang louder over the cacophony, emotion flooding through me as we tore through the darkness with the light of our united strength, expressing the desperate hope that had brought us here. "We won't let you win," I yelled, conviction torn right from my gut, pouring into every syllable. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash as magic erupted, engulfing everything in a dazzle of warm light. My heart pounded, and for a moment, I was weightless, untethered from the darkness that had clung to me. I felt a surge of warmth, an energy growing stronger around me, and I sensed the presence of the children joining in, their spirit charging alongside ours, determined to break loose. The mirror split apart, shards of glass bursting outward like shrapnel, leaving behind a gaping void instead of a reflection. The shadows shrieked, twisting into a cyclone of chaos, but our voices shone brighter, resonating with the truth of love and freedom. And just like that, they began to emerge, like rays of light breaking through dark clouds. "Don't give up!" I shouted as we beheld the spectral figures rising, faces finally breaking free from their torment, smiles illuminating their features like the dawn breaking through the night. My heart soared as the children we had fought for finally broke free, swirling around us in a chorus of laughter that echoed the very essence of hope, binding us all together. The shadows recoiled, their grasp weakening, and as I stood there, surrounded by the radiant light, I felt the darkness start to dissolve, as if it were a bad dream fading away with the morning sun. "We're doing it!" I yelled, recognizing the victory unfolding around us. But just as I thought we had turned the tide, a chilling voice slithered from the darkness, paralyzing the air around us. "You think you've won?" I turned as the shadows coalesced into a tangible form, revealing the twisted figure of myself once again, a hideous mockery of all I feared. "You'll soon learn that you cannot escape me." The figure loomed over me, an overwhelming presence cloaked in shadows, and its laugh was a distorted echo of my own voice. "You think you can save them?" It taunted, the mocking tone feeding into my deepest insecurities. I could feel anger and fear swirling within me like a storm, every instinct firing off warning signals as the world around us shifted. My friends, Jamie and Ethan, stood frozen beside me, their expressions a mix of horror and determination. I could see the flickering spirits of the children swirling around, their energy wavering as they were caught in the clash between hope and despair. The shadows writhed grotesquely at our feet, undulating like black smoke, eager for the slightest hint of weakness to swallow us whole. "Stay back!" I shouted, trying to draw strength from the light that still pulsated within the room. But every word dripped with desperation, my voice barely masking the primal fear clawing at my throat. The twisted figure stepped forward, shadows curling and writhing like a living armor around its form. "Do you really think your light can penetrate this darkness?" It laughed, a deep, dreadful sound that crawled under my skin, making me feel small and insignificant. "You are nothing but memories, and those lost children, they are mine." The very air turned heavy, pressing against my chest as I struggled to breathe. I felt trapped, like I was drowning in darkness, while twisted images of past failures flashed through my mind. Moments of regret, loss, and fear replaying like a movie I couldn't stop. There, in the depths of this chaotic realm, I saw the faces of children from the drawing, each one etched in pain and suffering, their eyes pleading for release. "No! They deserve to be free," I bellowed, defiantly stepping toward the shadowy figure. Though my knees felt weak and my heart raced, a surge of resolve pushed me onward. I wasn't going to let this nightmare consume us. "You may have taken them once, but we will not let you keep them." With each word I spoke, a flicker of brilliance sparked in the air, illuminating my surroundings. The shadows recoiled momentarily, as if my voice was a weapon against their eerie presence. Sensing my newfound strength, Jamie and Ethan rallied beside me again, their hands raised as if to summon the light that we all hoped would fight against this consuming darkness. In the depths of my mind, I wrestled through conflicting emotions. Fear mingled with determination, and beneath it all lingered a realization. I wasn't just fighting for the children trapped in this nightmare. I was fighting for myself, too. The part of me that had been buried beneath regret, allowing shadows to linger far too long. As if sensing my resolve, the figure twisted, becoming a dark vortex that sucked into shadows while swirling around me. "You cannot resist your fate," it hissed, its breath colder than ice, sending tendrils of fear wrapping around my heart. You will always belong to this darkness. My eyes darted around the room, seeking something, anything, that could help us. And then I spotted it near the shattered mirror, a faint glimmer of light emanating from an object buried in the remains of broken glass. It pulsed, beckoning me with an irresistible glow. I knew I had to reach it before the figure unleashed its wrath upon us. "I'll get it," I yelled to Ethan and Jamie, not waiting for their response. I sprinted toward the shattered pieces, feeling the sharp edges of the glass bite into my palms. Each step pulled me closer to the light, and I could hear the whispers of the children growing stronger, encouraging me. As I grasped the object, a small, intricately designed locket, I felt a surge of warmth radiate through me. The whispers resonated, almost like a soft song, filling my mind with memories of joy, laughter, and freedom. This was a part of their essence, a fragment of their spirit, and I knew in that instant that I held the key to setting them free. But just as hope surged within me, the dark figure recoiled, its anger mounting to a terrifying level. "No! You dare defy me!" It shrieked, the very room shaking with its fury. Shadows writhed violently, surging toward me like a tidal wave, a fierce rush of darkness intent on consuming my light. "Ethan! Jamie!" I yelled, clutching the locket tightly, feeling its energy connecting with mine. "We have to work together. Chant their names again. Show them the way." With trembling resolve, we began to chant once more, our voices resonating in unison, echoing the strength of our bond. The shadows surged, trying to drown out our cries, but each name we spoke ignited a bright flare of energy that cut through the black like a knife. I could feel it, the energy connecting like threads, weaving a tapestry of hope. A blinding light burst forth as the locket glowed brighter, and the shadows screeched in agony, shriveling back from the brilliance. Surrounded by the light, the spirits of the children began to emerge, faint outlines coalescing and taking form, their smiles brighter than the fading darkness. "Help us! Save us!" they cried, their voices like chimes in the night air. With each chant, the locket pulsated with life, glimmering like a beacon in this nightmare, and I felt my heart align. With their spirits, mending the divide, bridging realms once thought unattainable. The chaos around us twisted into a beautiful dance, illuminating every corner, illuminating my soul, and fading the shadows into ribbons of smoke. "Let them go!" I screamed defiantly, feeling every ounce of love within me building to a climax that resonated through every breath, every pulse. The figure howled, its form flickering as it struggled against the storm of light surrounding us. "You think this will save you?" It spat, shadows lashing out, but with each name we chanted, I felt its grasp weaken, slipping away like sand through fingers. The children surged forward, their ethereal forms intertwining with our light, each spirit reaching out toward the fading shadows. "We are free," they sang, their voices harmonizing in a magnificent crescendo that filled my heart with warmth. Just then, chaos erupted. An explosion of energy pulsed through the air, vibrating with life force as we felt the walls tremble one final time. The shadows writhed in futile rage, dissolving into wisps of mist as the light swallowed them whole. And then silence. It was as if the world held its breath, pausing on the edge of an incredible release. I glanced around, taking in the women still standing by my side, their faces bright with hope and determination. "We did it," Jamie whispered, disbelief coloring her tone, still clutching the locket. I felt the warmth enveloping me, a serene energy that healed the very fractures within my soul. The room shimmered softly, illuminated by the laughter of the liberated spirits, their forms glowing like distant stars as they danced around us, filling the space with a radiant energy. This time, the shadows had truly been defeated, their hold broken, and the children's whispers of gratitude echoed like a gentle breeze. The mirror was now restored, reflecting the brilliant hues of joy. But Deep within, I could sense that the battle might not be over just yet. As silence enveloped the room, I felt a strange tension lingering in the air, like the calm before a storm. The joyful spirits whirled around us, but I couldn't shake the unease creeping up my spine. Something felt off. I glanced at Jamie and Ethan, their expressions shifting from triumphant relief to apprehensive uncertainty. "Is it truly over?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, the question hanging heavy between us. Suddenly, a shiver raced through the room, and the radiant light flickering around us began to dim. The glow of the locket waned, and my heart sank as I watched the children's spirits start to fade. Their laughter turned to faint echoes, desperately searching for something that didn't feel quite right. "Stay close," I urged them, feeling the pulse of darkness looming again, like the strangled breath of a predator lying in wait. Just as I braced myself, I heard an unsettling noise. An echoing thud reverberated through the floor, sending vibrations racing up my legs. "What was that?" Ethan whispered, fear clawing through his voice. Before I could answer, the floorboards creaked ominously beneath us, and shadows began to creep back toward us, moving as if drawn by a magnetic force. Panic surged within me. "We need to find a way out now," I shouted as I turned towards the exit, sensing the shadows thickening behind us. But as I took a step back toward the door, the air grew colder, chilling my bones. Time seemed to stretch as I caught a glimpse of the mirror in the corner of my eye. It wasn't just reflecting the room anymore. Something dark and twisting was forming within it, warping the light. I took an involuntary step closer, unable to tear my gaze away, as the mirror showed a world of darkness, an existence that felt infinitely colder than the surrounding, creeping shadows. "Don't look at it!" Jamie screamed, her voice slicing through the threatening stillness. But it was too late. I was entranced by the horrors unfolding inside the glass. There were images of spirits trapped in endless gray voids, their faces twisted in agony, mouths opening in silent screams, and a chill of realization washed over me. This wasn't just a mere reflection. It was a portal to something crueler, deeper, and far more unsettling than anything we had experienced. "No, this can't be happening," I shouted, my heart racing as I felt the familiar grip of despair wrapping around me, squeezing tighter with every passing moment. As I turned back toward my friends, I saw that they were struggling against the weight of the darkness stifling the air. The shadows coiled around them, thick and suffocating, whispering vile promises that churned in the depths of my mind. "Join us. Become part of us," the voices hissed, seductive and sinister, eroding the sense of hope we had fought for. "Fight it, don't listen," I called out, desperation bleeding into my words. I reached for Jamie, pulling her closer, desperate to anchor her in reality. But as I held her, her eyes dulled, glazed over like she was already slipping away into that chilling void. "No, Jamie, stay with me," I pleaded, shaking her, but my heart dropped as I felt the warmth of her body start to fade, becoming cold and distant. Ethan was similarly ensnared, the shadows curling around him like tendrils of smoke, echoing the laughter of the lost children, manipulating the emotions woven into their memories. I felt a newfound urgency swell within me. I couldn't lose them to this darkness. Mustering every ounce of strength, I lunged forward and grabbed the locket again, focusing on the light it had once radiated. "This will not take you," I shouted, clutching the locket against my chest, channeling every hope I had left. I felt the warm glow begin to return, slowly suffusing the air around us with light. I reached deep within myself, remembering the names of those lost, the ones we sought to save. "Help us," my voice rang out, trembling yet defiant, as I pointed the locket toward my friends. "Remember who you are. Fight it. Fight together." The shadows writhed angrily, trying to devour the warmth I was sending out. I could feel Jamie and Ethan's hearts responding, flickering slight energy as I channeled the essence of the children into a tangible force. "Open your eyes," I cried, feeling the tendrils of darkness wrapping around me, desperate to pull me back. Suddenly, the winds in the room shifted, swirling chaos pulling at my clothes. But I pushed through, willing every emotion inside me to surge as a barrier against the shadows. "I believe in you," I roared, pouring every memory, every ounce of love into the locket. "We can break free." Like the awakening of a long-dormant spirit, light erupted from the locket and blossomed outward, affording Jamie and Ethan a moment of clarity. Their eyes blinked rapidly as they shook off the weight pressing down on them. I could see the spark of recognition igniting within them, the power of friendship and hope piercing through that veil of darkness. "Get up! We need to fight!" Jamie shouted, her voice now a rallying cry that resonated with the renewed strength binding us together. We stood united, our voices merging in a harmonious chant, creating an unwavering barrier against the darkness creeping closer. As the wave of light surged forward, we felt the intensity of it resonate, obliterating the shadows that sought to reclaim our spirits. But just then, the mirror cracked with a violent shatter, and a pulse of darkness breached the room in that moment of vulnerability. Tendrils of shadow lunged at us, cold and jagged, grazing my skin and igniting a searing pain. I felt their icy touch, clawing, trying to pull me back into the depths of the vortex. In terrible clarity, I saw a tattered fragment of my own spirit trapped on the other side of that dark mirror, its face contorted in despair and rage. "You will never escape," it screeched, a chilling distortion of my own voice, taunting me with memories of suffering deep inside. I was drawn to the fragment, my heart aching for understanding, but fear clutched at me, hard as iron. The essence of darkness and despair was shuddering, fighting against the light around us, and I was caught between two realities, torn apart like a thread unraveling from a tapestry. "Don't look!" I shouted towards my friends, but it was too late. I could see their own reflections flickering, trapped in the chaos. "Remember the light!" The tremors of the mirror intensified, twisting and warping, but I focused myself, my breath steadying as I fought against the looming darkness. I grasped the locket tightly, feeling its warmth and knowing that if I channeled everything, the love, the hope, and the memories of those lost, I could break through. "Together!" I cried, urging my friends as the shadows tried to slither around us again. "We can do this!" With the flickering spirits swirling around, I could feel the tension building to a breaking point. The room began to spin, the boundaries between our world and the darkness blurring. And on the other side, the twisted figure of my own reflection loomed closer, threatening to pull me into its suffocating embrace. But I clung fiercely to my friends, feeling their presence anchoring me to reality, and I knew I had to fight with everything I had. The warmth of their energy mixed with mine, spiraled up into a whirlwind of brilliant light, colliding with the creeping shadows that threatened to engulf us once more. The explosive illumination burst forth, breaking the restraints of darkness, just as I felt the whisper of the children resonate in my heart. "Save us." The shadows recoiled, struggling against the sudden surge of energy, but their grasp was weakening. With every echoed name and chant, our combined power grew, pulsating outward, demanding release. But just as it seemed we might win, the malevolent figure twisted violently within the reflection. "You cannot win," it shrieked, its voice blending with the shadows, slithering along the edges of my consciousness, taunting my fears again. Could this monster truly be part of me? Would I always have to fight it? Would I even leave this place whole? The air grew thick with tension as my reflection twisted and warped within the mirror, its grotesque mockery of me seeping into my consciousness, dragging me further into despair. I felt the shadows tightening around us, their cold grasp clinging tighter with every passing second. My heart raced, pounding against my chest like a drum heralding the end. Faces from the shadows flashed before my eyes. Lost children, their smiles faded to terror, reminding me of everything I fought to save. "No, this is not who I am," I screamed, forcing my voice to cut through the suffocating darkness, willing to reclaim every piece of light I still held. With determination coursing through me, I locked eyes with Jamie and Ethan, seeing the pain and fear reflected back. There was no time for doubt. We had to make one final stand. Together, we stepped forward, drawing on the threads of our friendship, weaving a tapestry of hope strong enough to break through. As the shadows roared with rage, they lashed out violently, enveloping us in a whirlwind of darkness. But we stood firm, chanting the names of the children, their innocent laughter guiding us through the chaos. With each repetition, the warm glow of the locket pulsed brighter, illuminating the suffocating darkness, driving it back inch by inch. The spirits coalesced around us, their forms solidifying as they intertwined with the locket's light, forming an unbreakable bond of love and hope. "Let this end," I shouted, pouring every ounce of conviction into those words as I raised the locket high, feeling its warmth flood through me. I could see the shadows recoil, flickering uncertainly, sensing their impending defeat. The malevolent figure in the mirror howled, rage radiating through the room as the dark tendrils writhed and twisted, desperate to reclaim power. But I hardly recognized it anymore. It was an echo of a past self that had no hold over me. "No more!" I exclaimed, my voice now a fierce battle cry as I focused everything on the light. I could feel the energy swirling within me, pushing outward, surging toward that gaping, dark portal. The spirits of the children fluttered close, their faces bright and smiling as if to say they were ready to be free. Their collective energy surged through the locket, and with one final, united scream, we unleashed the brilliance that bloomed from our love. Light exploded into the space, an overwhelming force that shattered the hold of darkness, and the shadowy figure wailed in agony as it was bombarded by the dazzling energy. The very foundation of the room shook violently, everything vibrating as the mirror cracked and splintered, a cascade of reflective shards erupting in all directions. I felt my fears dissipate, burning away like mist as I turned my gaze back to my friends, their faces illuminated with fierce determination. In that moment of unified strength, we could feel the powers of hope eclipsing the shadows for good, banishing the darkness into a mere memory. The whispers of despair faded, replaced by a chorus of laughter from the liberated spirits, echoing off the walls like a melody that would never die. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of something shifting in the remains of the mirror. My heart sank as I felt a final surge of dark energy attempting to claw its way back, seeking to entrap me once more. Panic surged through me as I realized it wasn't fully gone yet. The darkness still sought a way back into my life. I had to make my stand and close that door for good. "No!" I shouted, gathering all my strength as I stepped towards the broken mirror, the shards glimmering like 1,000 tortured stars. "You will not take me. I choose love, light, and freedom." With every ounce of resolve I could muster, I plunged the locket into the center of the remaining darkness. A blinding flash erupted, illuminating the room in a radiant glow, and all at once everything shattered. My fears, the shadows, and the haunting memories spiraled away into nothingness like ashes in the wind. I felt embraced by warmth, the energy wrapping around me like a comforting blanket, and I knew that I was finally free. As the echo of the children's laughter faded into the distance, I stood amidst the remnants of the battle, feeling a profound sense of peace wash over me. Jamie and Ethan were beside me, their faces radiant, awakened, with newfound light behind their eyes. There would be scars from this experience, but together we had triumphed against the darkness, forging an unbreakable bond that even the shadows couldn't sever. We stepped out of the remnants, leaving behind the horrors that lurked within. I knew, deep down, that those shadows might linger in the corners of my mind. I carried the light within me, a beacon to guide me through. We turned back for one last look at the mirror, now a harmless, cracked reflection of the room, a testament to the battle we had fought and delivered us at last from darkness.